Welcome to Photoactive, a podcast about photography and technology. I'm Kirk McElhearn.
And I'm Jeff Carlson.
So it's time for another round of Let's Play Photoactive. Are you ready?
This is a game now. Yay!
Yes, it is a game. Well, as we mentioned, I think in our last episode or the one just before that, we haven't had time to come up with full episode topics to talk about things. So what we've been doing is finding interesting articles. And in some cases, you've been testing out things. And I think this isn't lazy. There are a lot of interesting topics that we find that we can talk about and relate to our photographic experience and hopefully others. And maybe we're finding articles that our listeners haven't spotted. So it'll be interesting for you. I want to start with one from the New York Times last week, and I'll put a gift link in the show notes. So if you don't have a New York Times subscription, you won't hit the paywall. Don't tell them that 7,000 people are going to click the gift link. And it's a brief review of a book of photographs, which was published by a studio in London that made passport photos. In fact, they might still make passport photos. And there are 300 of these. The book is called Passport Photo Service, An Unexpected Archive of Celebrity Portraits. What I find really interesting is you're seeing a lot of these people unvarnished. Some of them look like your teachers in your high school yearbook, you know, the way they're standing and the clothes they're wearing. Like Sean Connery's got this, normal white shirt with a sweater over it, and he looks like a math teacher. Van Morrison looks like a history teacher. But what's really interesting is that these are people who were famous already at the time, and yet they have to have these photos taken for a special reason. Like they're used to having photos taken, and the way they look, it doesn't look like they're bored. It doesn't look like they're interested, but it looks like you're seeing an angle of them that you don't see in the usual photos.
Well, the thing about the passport photos is they are, if you've not had one done lately, it's so very, very strict. And like you can't smile. It's really designed to honestly get the worst version of yourself.
It's a mugshot photo.
It's a mugshot photo, yeah. And so just imagining what it must be like for people who are accustomed to being photographed, who know which angles are best at them, like how they should look to be the most flattering in any sort of photo. And this is something where, you need just something really basic. But of course, I doubt that any of them would want to be I doubt that any of them would want to have anything that is just straight up basic, because somebody's going to see it at some point, like in this case. It's also interesting that at least one of these, there's one of Kate Winslet in 1997, and it mentions that this was, I think, for a passport in a movie. So it says she sat for a passport photo, not for herself, but for Julia, the character she played in the movie Hideous Kinky. So some of these are, deliberate characterizations, but mostly it's just, hey, these people need a mugshot. And you get that the celebrities are, what's a good way of saying it? Like sort of turning on the charm, turning on their I'm being photographed mode, but they're also kind of unguarded too, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's what stands out. I'd be interested in seeing the book. 300 photos, and there's obviously a lot more people than what they show here. Some of them are kind of strange, though. The last one in the article is of Sting, and the lighting's really bad. You can barely see his eyes, and that wouldn't pass today as a passport photo.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't be able to use that. Some countries, you'll go to an office and they'll take the photo for you. You won't have to submit a passport photo. I think they're doing that in some parts of France right now. My suspicion is that they're doing that not just to take a photo, but because they have a LiDAR scanner, so they can use them for facial recognition. Every photo you put online allows people to recognize your face. And Jeff, you've put so many of them online of you and your family that, you guys are going to pop up in all the facial recognition things.
Well, it's especially funny because the last time I had my passport photo taken, I had much longer hair and a sort of a darker, longer beard. I totally look like a ne'er-do-well terrorist in my passport photo. So
all right, the next one is another one of photos of celebrities, not entirely. It's a Guardian article from the 4th of April. Occasionally, a picture can change the course of history. 33 scandalous photos that shocked the world. And the top photo is Hugh Grant when he was arrested for soliciting something in Los Angeles. And you can see how uncomfortable he is in this mugshot. What's interesting is the second photo. Now, you don't know who Christine Keeler is, do you?
I know the photo, but I don't know who she is. Yeah.
Okay. So there was a member of parliament named Profumo, and it turned out that he was seeing this young woman who was a sort of a geisha-friendly sex worker-ish type thing. And this was a huge scandal because she was friends with some Russian guy or something, and there was a suspicion that she was getting information from him. So two things are interesting. First of all, he's the second most famous person from Stratford-upon-Avon because he was MP here. And second of all, a friend of mine, the late author Peter Robinson, told me once that when he was young, people saw this photo and it just made them drool. So she's naked, but you don't see anything. She's sitting, backwards on a chair, straddling a chair, and she's got her elbows in front of her breasts. And it made young men very excited at the time. This photo was quite liberating for 1963, this sort of photo. And while she's not naked, you can tell she's not wearing any clothes. I mean, she might be wearing underwear. You can't really see it. But the photo itself shocked a lot of people at that time.
Well, it's black and white, and it's very stark. The middle lower part of her torso and her hips are just almost entirely black. So
yeah.
Not only are you sort of drawn to that because it's a naked figure, but also because you have her legs, which are out at an angle, and like her knees are bent. It looks like maybe she has her feet hooked on the legs of the chair. But like compositionally, everything just kind of points right to that middle dark area where you just have to imagine that she's naked behind there. From just a pure composition aesthetic point of view, it works in that way as well.
Are there any that stood out for you in this article?
Well, it's funny because some of these are very – I mean, like that one of her is very posed and staged.
Right.
The Hugh Grant one exactly. The Hugh Grant one, of course, is a mugshot. But there's a snapshot with former Prince Andrew, Virginia Giuffre, which is just it is a snapshot, but it is a damning snapshot because of the horrible things that happened. So it's an interesting mix of things that are just casual snapshots, and also, like, for example, there's one of a soccer tournament with Diego Maradona that was obviously shot by a sports photographer, but it represented
a soccer tournament. It was the World Cup quarterfinal in 1986. It was more than a soccer tournament.
It was a football game. Is that better?
Yes. A football match. They say match.
A lot of these I've seen. Some of them I haven't, but it was just interesting that it's a mix of things that seem historic and some that are just, casual shots, but not
casual
always.
Shots that have a backstory, like the photographer Lee Miller taking a bath in Hitler's bathtub in 1945.
Yeah.
So if you know what's going on, then it has something to say. And
there's some of them where the photo itself really makes no difference. It's just that because of what happened later, like Anthony Weiner's sexting selfie, like dude's in good shape, who cares? But it really caused a massive, massive problems. So
yeah. Okay, so we've got one that you're going to talk about more. Apparently, DaVinci Resolve came out with a photo editing tool, and it's free?
Yeah. So, okay, this is really interesting because DaVinci Resolve has turned into one of the preferred video editors for lots of people. You can buy a studio version, which has a lot of things unlocked, but the free version that you can get is actually entirely workable. It's not like they've turned off a bunch of features to compel you to pay an upgrade. So a lot of video editors have jumped on to DaVinci Resolve. Also, not just because it's free, but it has really, really good color tools. So that's nice and interesting from the video standpoint. Well, in the new version 21 beta, they've added a photo module, basically using all of its power, all of its color manipulation, and making it so that you can edit your photos, including raw photos, with DaVinci Resolve. Now, I've seen plenty of people online saying this is the end of Lightroom because you can get a professional photo editor that doesn't cost any money and it rivals Lightroom. And I would say, sure, maybe, but
sure, maybe.
I've looked at this for a few minutes. I haven't had a chance to get really into it because I was away for a few days. It looks very intriguing. It does have a way that you can import photos, do some photo management, create albums, those sorts of things. The color tools are kind of what you would expect. You know, you could adjust brightness, shadows, temperature. Actually, the controls here, specifically like the raw controls, seem very close to what you would find in, say, Nitro, for example. We've talked about that in the past. And allegedly, it has a bunch of other tools like AI tools. You can replace areas, you can relight things. I've not dug into a lot of that. And honestly, it's not really easy to figure out how to get to those. And this could entirely be because I've only looked at it for a few minutes. But I guess the point is, if you want a good, free image editor that has really good provenance. I mean, professionals, people in Hollywood use DaVinci Resolve for their color timing and things like that. Definitely check it out. Is it a Lightroom killer? No.
We're going to link to an article in Digital Camera World, which I found through Apple News, and it says something, and I'd like you to explain. It says DaVinci Resolve uses a node-based workflow rather than the layers that are popular among mainstream photo editors. Mm-hmm. Where layers in Photoshop are stacked on top of each other, nodes are a flowchart style set of adjustments. I don't understand what that means.
I've not used that, but if you imagine like a flowchart organizer. So let's say, for example, you want to apply a LUT that makes your image or your video footage look, slightly washed out, more contrasty, whatever. What you would do is, rather than sort of apply that in a layer or in like a menu, you drag it as one of these little linked modules, and then you connect it. So you have visually the LUT exists as like a little tile, and you use little lines that connect it to the footage or to other edits or things like that. I'm probably not explaining this very well.
You're not, but do you use RetroBatch? So RetroBatch is a tool by the developer of Acorn, and it allows you to apply a lot of settings to images. So that's the way it works. What I'm thinking of, though, is let's say you want to apply a mask. A mask has to be a layer because it's defined according to the spatial element of a photo. So if you can't apply a mask as a node, how would you apply it?
I suspect, again, I haven't played with masks in this, but I suspect that a mask may be like not everything is applied as a node, but the nodes give you like another powerful way to do this.
Okay, you know what your homework is for the next episode.
I mean, also, it's one of these things where literally I've not had a need to play with DaVinci Resolve, and so I downloaded it last night and looked at it. And the interface by itself does not make it clear how to set this up. So there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. The photo module, at least as I'm looking at it now, like you have your photos, you have the photo you've selected that you're editing, and the edit controls are very much like what we'd find in almost everything. They're just sliders. You have scopes.
I can't imagine anyone making I can't imagine anyone making an interface for a photo editing tool that is very different because everyone is used to the concept of sliders, um, selections that expand when you click an arrow with graphs or histograms or whatever.
I think the real point of this is that someone who is mostly using video and they want
Yeah.
to include photos, you have those controls. And at some point, I think DaVinci, Blackmagic, the people who make this, somebody said, well, why don't we just take this capability and turn it into a photo module? Because maybe you have somebody who's building a slideshow or doing something that is video focused but needs photos incorporated into it. All the math is there. All the core tools are there. It's just that these are images that are not moving. And so my guess is they said, hey, look, we can put this in, apply a lot of the same controls that we have, and that will give us a leg up on all the other, Final Cut, Adobe Premiere, and all of that.
Well, imagine you're a documentary filmmaker and you're including both footage and still photos. I can see this as being a perfect way to manage the still photos, to apply your color grading across an entire film.
Yes.
And to do the edits you need rather than, I don't know how you would do it otherwise. You would edit it in Photoshop and then add the still in a photo editing tool where you wouldn't have the same flexibility maybe.
I think that's exactly it. I think you can bring your raw images in, you can edit them so that they match the same color grading that you have, the same look, the same whatever, and you're not having to bounce back and forth between Photoshop or Lightroom. Say if something changes, maybe you have to go out and re-edit that image elsewhere. Like it puts everything right into one place, which I'm sure has speed benefits and workflow
consistency
benefits too. Yeah, and consistency. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. I look forward to seeing more. And again, this is not a Lightroom killer unless you are doing a lot of video and this helps you with stills. But I think most photographers aren't going to download this video tool in order to do images. Maybe there are some. And once again, everything is non-destructive, so you can absolutely download it, play with it, see if it feels good, and experiment.
Okay, another article from Digital Camera World, and this one is about film simulations, and it's titled The Film Simulation Rabbit Hole, Why Digital Photographers Are Obsessing Over Analog Looks. And there's actually two things going on. He's talking about film simulations or recipes, whatever, and particularly Fujifilm, and he's talking about people spending even more hours making them look like cheap films from the 70s and the 80s. And he talks about how much time people might spend in Lightroom going through dozens or hundreds of different presets to find what they want. And he's pointing out that if you really want to use a film simulation, you need to learn what it does and turn it on and ignore the rest. If you shot film back in the day, you knew what Kodachrome looked like, you knew what Ektachrome looked like, you knew what Tri-Expand looked like, and all of the films that weren't from Kodak, right? And you would not see this through your camera as you can now, right? In a mirrorless camera, you see the film simulation applied when you look through the viewfinder or on the screen, but you have it in your mind. You know what sort of look is going to come out. And the article says film simulations aren't the problem per se. The problem is treating them as a solution to not knowing what you want your images to look like. They become a substitute for vision rather than a tool to achieve it. And that, I think, is the most important thing. And that's what I like about setting my camera, particularly to black and white, because I know what I want to get out of the camera, and I don't plan to go through all these presets and film simulations after. And when I had Fujifilm cameras, you can take a raw photo and convert it to multiple film simulations in camera. And I would try that. But I eventually realized that, well, if I do color, I want this film simulation. If I do black and white, I want this one. And I think this is really important that, sure, some people want to spend their time in Lightroom going through presets, but I think it's more important to figure out what look you want for your photos. And this could vary. Maybe you want portraits to look one way and landscape to look another, but to think of it that way and not think that you want to keep trying more and more until you find it. I don't know about you, but if I ever pick one of those menus with presets and I try 1, 2, 6, 12, 30, 50, they all look alike after a while.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been drawn to that sort of thing, but I can understand some of this is, I think, backlash against digital. People want the convenience of digital, but they want that sort of old-timey look.
Old-timey.
And by saying old-timey, I know
Yep.
I just said
They want the old-timey look. Yep.
I'm 150 years old, everybody. But let me go open up some sarsaparilla and sit down on my park bench here.
No, you want moonshine, not sarsaparilla.
Well, I didn't want
to. You want to fill your corncob pipe with some real tobacco, and you want to open up that jug of moonshine.
This is a family podcast. I would never suggest. Yes. But it's the type of thing where I think people, they want something that evokes something else, because honestly, digital does a really good job of reproducing things in a crisp way or in an oversaturated way, or all the things we've talked about with digital. And this is still digital, but gives you some creativity without having to say, all right, how do I go into Photoshop and make this different? How do I, apply presets in Lightroom? Even though it harks back to older styles, like vintage styles, it's also a way of people being able to say, I want my picture to look different in a way, or unique in a way, even though unique is sort of doing a lot of work there because it's not really unique because it's an old style, et cetera, et cetera. But it's different. It's not just, oh, look, another picture that my phone snapped that has good exposure, right?
Yes, but also it could be that you're copying some look that is popular on Instagram or someplace else, and you want to have that old-timey look because someone you're emulating has it. Yeah. And if that's the way you want to do photography, that's fine. But I think that the idea of learning your film simulation is really useful. I want to remind, we'll put a link in the show notes, episode number 8 back in, I don't know, the 20th century. We interviewed Gordon Lang, who wrote a book called In Camera, and he's talking about all the ways that you can get your photos right in camera and all the things that you can do to not worry about editing afterwards. And this was years ago, and the progress that cameras have made since then means that you can adjust your film simulation preset recipe, whatever in camera. You can adjust brightness and contrast and shadows and highlights, and you can go from one film simulation and make it your own. And of course, the iPhone does that too with, I forgot what they call it because I never look at that part of the iPhone because it's too confusing.
I should know this because I just wrote a book about it. You just
published a new edition of your book, which we're going to plug in the show notes as well. Take Control of iPhone Photography. No, Take Control of Digital Photography?
Take Control of iPhone Photography.
Right, iPhone photography.
And styles is what they're called.
Photo styles.
So photographic styles.
Learn your favorite film simulations and shoot with that in mind rather than anything else. So we have one last article that you sent me. It's the difference between drinking coffee and tea.
That was just a video.
I know you got to put a link in the show notes because you're the coffee guy and I'm the tea guy, and I think this is very fitting.
Yeah. I did. So basically, for people who aren't going to take a look at it, it's just two, I want to say, parrots, maybe some sort
white,
of birds.
I think, are they cockatoos, something like that?
Sure, let's say that.
Cockatoo sounds good.
Photoactive, noted bird avian experts. Basically, one bird with coffee just absolutely freaks out, and the other bird labeled as tea is just really rather calm and well ordered. Yes, there will be a link in the show notes. I do not want to suggest that this is us, but on some days this is absolutely us.
Okay, should we do snapshots?
We can do snapshots.
What have you got?
I have a little something that actually saved my printing bacon. So this is a printing thing. Years ago, and I'm pretty sure we have an episode about this, I bought a fairly nice Epson color photo printer. And it's still there, and I still print occasionally, not as much as I should. And I was having trouble getting it to pull the paper through. And I realized the reason for this was basically the rollers needed to be cleaned. And one way you could do that is you have these Epson inkjet printer cleaning sheets. This actually is a Japanese import, and there are lots of different ones. I decided to go with one that was from Epson because some of them, and recognize I'm looking at Amazon, and so you have things from who knows where, but some of them seem to be just thick pieces of paper that they would charge you money for. Some of them, so I said, this is the case where I'm just going to pay the full price. The full price was like $9, so it's not that big of a deal. But basically, it's a sheet of paper, and it's treated on one side, so it's like slightly – it would be too much to say that it's sticky, but it's like slightly tacky.
Is it like the glue on the back of a Post-it?
A little bit, yeah. And so you run this through a few times. It picks up any of the dust and things that are on the roller. And as soon as I did that, I was able to resume printing. I had visions of me having to go in with like a Q-tip and some sort of solution or take things apart. And I figured before I even get into any of that, I'll just give this a try. Worked like a charm. So it's just called Epson Inkjet Printer Cleaning Sheet A4, size 3 pieces, MJCLS Japan import. I don't know what all that is. The color, it says color, it's written in Japanese, but it was $9. It worked great. So that's my recommendation. How about you? What do you have this week?
A developer reached out to me a couple of weeks ago, sent me a license for an app that I'd never heard of called Parachute Backup. And I just opened the app now, and since I got it, they have added a splash screen saying that Parachute Backup has a new home. And so what happened is the person who originally created this app sold it to this developer in Germany. And what Parachute Backup does is it gives you two types of backups for your Mac. It can back up your iCloud Drive, and it can back up your iCloud Photos. And it can do full backups, incremental backups, scheduled backups. It can do it to an internal disk, an external disk, a network volume, all the things that you would expect backups to do. It's really important to back up your iCloud Drive because most backup tools don't back it up. And I know, for instance, Carbon Copy Cloner not only backs up the iCloud Drive, but downloads every file, which isn't on your Mac if you've set it to optimize storage. Now, what this app does is the same thing with the Photos library. It'll download the files from iCloud that are not on your Mac, back them up, and then delete them. So you can back up your entire library, even from a Mac that doesn't have all the photos there. And I think this is a really good tool for photographers who are using Apple Photos to be able to back it up. And yes, they're on iCloud and they're on multiple devices, but we know how cloud services work. Things get lost.
You can never have too many backups.
It backs everything up in a folder structure, which is what you would see if you go inside your Photos library, right? If you right-click and you choose Show Package Contents. And this is a really good way to go and dig out something if you've lost a file. It keeps your original file names. I don't think it keeps any metadata like albums or anything, but it might. It's very time consuming for the first backup because depending on how much storage you have or the size of your library, it's going to take a long time. I think for iCloud, it took me about 6 hours, for Photos a little bit less, but it's certainly worth getting. We'll put a link in the show notes to the Mac App Store. It is not a subscription app. I believe it's just $15/£15/€15, a one-time purchase. So it's called Parachute Backup, and I think if you have a Photos library, you should back it up regularly with a tool like this.
Backups. In fact, I think recently it was like World Backup Day or something, but honestly, every week is World Backup Day. You should have good backups of everything, period.
Exactly. And we'll link in the show notes to some episodes we've done on backups because we did one, I don't know, recently, last year sometime, talking about backups, about our obsession with backups and backing up our backups and all that. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, that's enough for now. See you next time, Jeff. Bye.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Photoactive. You can find show notes, including any photos we discuss in this episode, at photoactive.co. That's photoactive.co. We couldn't afford the M. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/photoactivecast. That's PhotoActiveCast in one word. You can subscribe to PhotoActive in your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts. See the links on our website. And think about leaving us a rating or review in iTunes or in your podcast app.